Hi, Neil here. Before you listen to this latest episode of the Meeples and Miniatures podcast, a quick word of apology over potential issues with some of the audio quality. After we recorded the show, it became apparent listening back to the audio that my end of the conversation, rather than being picked up on the microphone that I got plugged into my laptop, it had actually recorded via the laptop's own internal microphone. This obviously isn't anywhere near as good a quality, and it also sounds much further away. Now, I tried to clean this up, running it through a couple of post-processing processes to try and make the audio better. It's nowhere near perfect, so apologies if the difference in especially volume between myself and the two mics is too marked. Unfortunately, we recorded a couple of our episode, and I really wanted to get it out, and didn't really fancy having to basically throw this thing away and completely have to redo it. So hopefully it's still in a status where it's listenable to. I suggest that you definitely use earphones while you listen to the show, and apologies for any low quality as far as the audio is concerned. There's also background noise on several occasions. Well, I hope it doesn't impair the enjoyment of the show too much, and in the meantime, happy gaming, and I hope you enjoy the show. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is sponsored by Two Fat Lardies, Code Darms Paints, and Miniature Wargames with Battle Games magazine, and also by the generous donations of you, the listener. Thanks to everybody for their continued support. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast, episode 128, Operation Market Larden 2, and Flintloque, with Neil Shuck, Mike Hobbs, and Mike Whitaker. This podcast was recorded on the 18th of June, 2014. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. I'm Neil Shuck, and I'm here with Mike Hobbs and Mike Whitaker.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, it's nice to be all back together again, having been so long apart. I mean, we haven't seen each other since Saturday.
Yep.
And just to place this in people's calendar, can I just wish everybody a very happy Waterloo Day? We're recording this on the 18th of June, the 199th anniversary of the Battle of Waterloo. And we're going to be talking about something Napoleonic, or at least fake.
Ish.
In the loosest sense of the word possible.
Yeah, so this evening, as well as chatting about various aspects of gaming, we're also going to be reviewing Flintloque later in the show, which is another one of Mike's games.
Mike's odd games, yes.
Yes, another one of your odd games, which I must admit I know next to nothing about, except for the fact that I've seen some of the figures, and I have a fundamental issue with Flintloque, which we'll address a bit later. Yeah, but as I say, we'll come to that. Yeah, we'll come to that later. I think the game is fundamentally flawed, but we'll address that in a bit.
I can't wait for this. This is going to be good.
I'm going to be listening to this with great interest.
Right. Okay. In the meantime, we had hoped to record a show live from Operation Market Larden, which was an event that happened right smack in the middle of Tractorland in Evesham, organised by A. Deacon and Paul Baldwin with Wyvern Wargamers. Hi guys. And we had hoped to bring you a live recording from that venue. Unfortunately, we were just far too busy playing games. And then two guys were far too busy eating curry.
Yes.
Very good curry.
Fine curry. And good beer as well.
Yes. I won't cry too much to the fact that I didn't actually make the curry this year. However, that will be corrected next year. I am assured that next year we may even be stopping over.
Ooh.
Right.
It'll never happen.
Probably not, but we can hope. Anyway, more of that in a second. But yes, so completely failed to record anything actually on the day at Operation Market Larden. But we got together a couple of days afterwards. And so we're going to catch up about that and have a chat about that. Because myself and Mr. Hobbs were playing. Mr. Whitaker had actually put on a game.
A fine game as well.
A fine game, the biggest game there. That, and
Only by figure count. I wasn't the only one on an 8x6 table.
Yeah, you were.
Was I?
Yeah.
I don't know. I was too busy running the game. There were games.
Mike Whitaker failing in his spatial awareness test. No, every other game was 6x4. Yours was an 8x6. Remember, we were the ones that the first thing we had to do was rearrange all the tables when you came in.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yes. Oh dear, this isn't big enough. Right. Anyway, but also in the meantime, there's also been the small matter of the very first official Saga Grand Melee down at Firestorm Games in Cardiff. And Mike was umpiring that, weren't you, Mike?
I was, yeah. And it was great. Really good event.
Which, again, an event I totally failed to attend. And I was gutted, because I fully planned to attend it and then discovered I had a college weekend, which I couldn't wriggle out of because I'd wriggled out my last one to go to Salute. So... So unfortunately, I had to miss what sounded like an absolutely tremendous weekend. So we'll find out all about that, and we'll also catch up on a couple of bits and pieces and what have you. So, what do we want to deal with first, guys? Shall we first talk about? Let's talk about the Grand Melee, shall we? So, Mr. Hobbs, over to you. From the wilds of Welsh Wales.
Well, it was a glorious Friday when we started. Myself and the Beastie Boys arrived at Firestorm about 5 o'clock to set up, to find that the people of Firestorm had pretty much done everything for us. God bless them. Tables were all laid out. Yeah, tables were all laid up. They had areas in between for our stuff. We had boxes of terrain all sorted. So the setting up really consisted of Lord S, or Andy, as he's known to his close chums, sitting down and... doing very little, and Darren headed for the Space Invader machine that he found. And we also had a couple of beers because they had the bar running. So we sort of set up and then we headed out.
Excuse me. They have a bar?
Did I not mention this? Yeah.
You never told me they had a bar.
There's a bar in Firestorm. Yes. The way it's run is you've got the shop at the front, and then you go into an area called the Battlefields, which is the gaming area, which holds about 35 plus tables. And it's run as a social club. So it's an official social club where you buy membership for. And because it's a social club, they can run a bar. So they've got a little seating area, a little barbecue area out the back, the bar's in there, and they've got like a little booth for recording sort of videos and stuff as well. So it's pretty good. So that was Friday. We set up quickly and then headed to the hotel, and then we had some treat, and then we went to the bar, and at 1:30, 1:45, I crawled into bed. So Saturday was a little bit of a shock. So yeah, we got there. We had 3 games on Saturday. There was 28 players. Really good mix of players. A couple of quite experienced people.
I was just going to note that this is sounding very like your tale of salute, which, as I recall, involved turning up the night before and not being fit for anything at 6 o'clock the following morning.
It's kind of a tradition.
Yeah. I think it's called a trend. It's Mike and the Beastie Boys getting together.
Yeah. So
Bad news.
Oh, no, well, it depends how you see it, really. I mean, they bought most of the beer, so in my book, it was good news. But yeah, we started on Saturday, got set up, 28 players, a few quite experienced players, lots of really new players, people who played once or twice, and quite a few players who never actually played. But they all played in the spirit of Saga, which was great. So everyone was helping out each other, lots of good scenarios, the food was great. And then obviously after the 3 games about 5:30, we then did some demos of Jugular, and we did a bit of a question and answer session on Crescent and the Cross, which consisted of when's it coming out then, which apparently should be later this month, hopefully. We then retired back to the pub, and then Sunday came about. I should also mention there was the Cardiff Beer Festival on that weekend, so a lot of people went to the Cardiff Beer Festival. I didn't. I was sort of good.
Sort of good.
Yeah, and then Sunday again, we had 28 players. We had some single players who were there for either Saturday or the Sunday. So we had a quick intro game, and then we did the last 2 games as sort of Swiss function, where you get the more experienced players playing themselves. So it got quite, well, not massively competitive, but it got more competitive for the last few games. And then, finished off, and it was great. The guy who won it is Chris Churchill from the Evesham Club.
Indeed, and I totally failed to congratulate him at the weekend.
Yeah, he did really well. But everyone did. There's a good mix of factions there. Really, really good people. Everyone who turned up and played or watched, they played in the right spirit. It wasn't a hyper competitive tournament. Everyone was helping out each other. It was a laugh. There was no arguments. People at Firestorm Games were absolutely fantastic in their organisation. We're going to go back next year, so there's going to be a 2015 Grand Melee. And I think a few people who organise events are actually talking to Firestorm about bringing their events there as well, because they were that impressed. So all in all, it was a really, really good weekend. Well worth it. And if you didn't go, well, tough. You'll have to come next year. Or you can go to Strasbourg in September.
Go to where, sorry?
Strasbourg.
Strasbourg?
Yeah, we've got the European leg of the Grand Melee being played in Strasbourg in September, organised by Alex. So that would be a good one.
Yeah, that's a bit far to go.
It's only a train trip away.
Yes, I suppose. Yeah, but it does kind of sound a long way. I mean, yeah, Strasbourg sounds a long way away.
Well, it's in the disputed zone between France and Germany, isn't it?
Indeed. Yeah. So you were saying there was a good smattering of factions. I mean, did all factions feature, or
we had about 10 out of the 17 that were allowed, so it was quite a good mixture. Mm-hmm. Yoms, Vikings, Welsh were the top 3, but we had there was a good mix of different factions that had been played. And a good mix of the playing styles as well. We had a few. We had Strathclyde Welsh using the wearing the first rules, which is Strathclyde Welsh are predominantly a mounted faction, and he played them all on foot, which was good to see.
But that's good, because it suggests that you've got the thing reasonably balanced, and there isn't sort of one uber faction that everybody plays.
No. I think everyone tried the Yoms Viking, which was probably the most. It was definitely the one that was taken the most. But people got used to how to play the Yoms and how to play against them, more importantly. So it balanced it all out. It was really good. We've had a few discussions sort of since then about the scenarios, and maybe we want to change the scenarios next year, which we might do. We might try and do some work on one of them. Yeah, I can't speak highly of it, enough of it. It was just a really, really good weekend. It was really tiring, running around doing rules questions all day, well, actually for 2 days, and trying to run jugular demos. Trying to swap between rule sets is really difficult. So,
And of course, you had to spend X number of weeks beforehand ginning up on all the factions, remembering all the little tweaks, and all the little tweaks, all the special rules.
yeah, I didn't really do that. I sort of remembered most of the things.
Hang on a second, you told me.
I did read up on some of the errata and make sure it was mostly a case of trying to be consistent. So I did make one rules mistake quite early on, which I put my hand up for. But luckily, that was only for one of the beast guys called BJ. So I did him out a few points, but he's not allowed to win, so that wasn't too bad.
Right, okay, so that was Grand Melee.
Yeah.
And then, of course, last weekend we were all together in the Vale of Evesham for Operation Market Larden 2, a bridge to Lard. I mean, Mr. Hobbs was playing a bit of brinkmanship and only made it at the very last minute.
I made it
in the end, which is a good thing. So, if you're not too sure what Operation Market Larden is, as I said at the start of the show, it's a gaming day dedicated to the goodness of wargaming rules that is Two Fat Lardies. It's organised by the guys at Wyvern Wargamers, primarily by A. Deacon and Paul Baldwin. Say hello, chaps. Very well organised. I would add, had an excellent time. But as I say, it's dedicated to Two Fat Lardies games. So there were, I think, about 10 games put on during the day, but they're all Two Fat Lardies titles. Or at least one of them, I think, is just a prospective Two Fat Lardies title.
2 of them, actually.
Yeah, 2.
I'm being Newtmum and Tin, whatever it was.
Tin Star.
Tin Star, yeah.
Yes. So, but we'll come to all the games that were on in a second, and also as well as the show being graced by our presence. Actually, I was invited. I was invited as a guest, you see. So, so that's how they let me in. Other than that, as well, both Rich Clark and Nick Skinner from Two Fat Lardies were there. So it was really good to catch up with both of those. Mike even got to play with Nick's ships, which we'll talk about in a minute. And as we said, Mr. Whitaker was actually winning a game.
I got to referee Nick Skinner and Rob Overy, who's written about half the Two Fat Lardies scenario books for I Ain't Been Shot Mum, so not intimidating at all.
Oh, piece of cake!
Yeah, not like they know the rules better than I do.
Oh, joy. Well, you can tell us all about that in a second. So, as I say, we turned up for a day of gaming goodness, and there's a fair selection of very different games going on, actually, wasn't there?
There was an awful lot. There were some really good games there. I was really hard picked to choose the 2.
There were some very nice looking games as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had the 28mm Chain of Command game that Rich and Nick put on at Salute. That was there, which is Laporte. Was it? Yeah, past Laporte, isn't it? Or something like
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is Germans versus British Airborne. And then there was a 15mm Chain of Command game, which was organised by A. Deacon, which, funnily enough, it was a game. That was again British Airborne versus 21st Panzer. And actually, from a historical point of view, happened just down the road from Rich's scenario. That was the scenario was called Circle the Wagons, but it's basically based on the defence of the Benneville bridgehead following the seizing of Pegasus Bridge. Then we had some big World War II game about Omaha Beach, which I can't remember.
Might have done.
I can't remember who put that on.
Me neither. It's all a blur.
There was a 28mm shot practice Peninsula War game. There was another 28mm Through the Mud and the Blood game, which was looking at Verdun.
Which was absolutely gorgeous, but then it's Sidney Roundwood who makes very, very nice scenery.
Yes. Both the shot practice game and Sid's Verdun game were lovely. The shot practice game had a a whole bunch of Grandmana's excellent Spanish scenery. And it was all done with Perry miniatures and what have you. It looked stunning. It was really good. Then there was, as we mentioned, there was a modern variation of I Ain't Been Shotgun called I Ain't Been Nukemum, which was I think it was a Russian assault on a village, I believe, somewhere in Germany. Then what else did we? Oh yeah. Then we had Kiss Me Hardy, which is the game that Mike played. So Mike can tell us all about that in a minute. Which Nick ran in the morning. And that was, I suspect, well, from my conversation at Salute with Nick, one of the reasons he put that on was because basically he had to turn up, put a mat on the table, take out 6 ships, and he'd take out 6 ships aside, and he was done.
There were some islands.
Yeah.
There were a couple of islands, yes.
Bit of sand.
Then there was a sharp practice variant based in the Indian Mutiny called Saving Mrs. Ryan, I think it was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, which Mike played in the afternoon, so he can tell us all about that as well. Then, as we said, in the afternoon they also did a Tin Star game, which is an upcoming Wild West game, which Simon Walker, if I remember rightly, put together.
No, that was Gareth put them together. I can't remember the guy's name, sorry. Which is a shame because he lives about 5 miles away from me.
Right, okay. Well,
Simon Walker did Saving Mrs. Ryan.
Simon Walker did Saving Mrs.
In the interest of proper credit for what looked like a very pretty game as well.
Right, okay, we'll edit all that together at some point. Because I just made a white mess of that. Never mind. I think that was about it. Have I missed anybody?
No, that was it.
Don't think so.
No, that was it.
Okay, right. So, I think we'll kick off with Mike, because I've been talking for at least 5 minutes. So, Mr. Hobbs, tell us all about Kiss Me Hardy.
Right, Kiss Me Hardy. I've never played it. I've heard about it, but Nick put it on, so I sat down and had a game against a wonderful guy called Roman. He was French, I was Brits. I showed my complete lack of knowledge of anything naval by basically using all the wrong tactics. Apparently sailing into the wind is not the thing to do. The rules...
No kidding.
No, it took me a long time. The rules themselves are really good. I've actually bought them for the PDF, which you can get for like £7. They're a really good, solid set of rules. We did have a little bit of a chat with Nick and sort of said, look, why not do a version 2? Because the only thing I noticed was each ship had an A4 page, and there was lots of sort of stats on there and things that you get to mark off and stuff. And I sort of thought, if you can get that onto, say, a card, I think that would make the game a lot simpler and sort of abstracted down a little bit more. But the core rules themselves are brilliant. A really, really good, fun set of rules. And you don't need to have protractors out there and do anything daft like that. It just flowed really well. And so yeah, we had a great game. I think I just won, mostly because they sort of helped me, and I worked out that getting very close to the enemy ships and then shooting the crap out of them is the thing to do when you're a Brit. So that's what I did.
Of course, that was played with Nick's collection, or sort of Nick's collection of Langtons.
Yeah.
Which look very, very pretty. But I am told that you have to do the rigging. Is that right?
Yes, you do. Come on, if you're going to buy a ship like that you can rig, you have to rig it, which is why I'm never going to buy them. So, the ships are fantastic, but I did have a little sneaky look on the Langston site, and it just looked far too complicated. Pick a hull, pick some different types of rigging depending on the type of rigging that's available to that, and then put the sails, and then put this on there. And I just thought, nah, I'm not doing that. So I found some of my old Man of War ships, and I've been painting those up this week.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, isn't Man of War fantasy game?
Yeah. But you know me, if you show me a proper Napoleonic game, I'm going to try and play a fantasy just to upset some dyed-in-the-wool Napoleonic player.
That sounds like a link into a review later on.
Yes. But more of that later, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed. But yeah, if you've got any interest in sort of Napoleonic naval action, and you haven't looked at the Lardy's rules, go and pick them up. They're £7. Well worth it. Give them a go. You won't go wrong. And also, if you could drop a message to Nick saying, why not do a version 2 of these, that'd be even better.
Nick, have you taken the hint yet?
He's going to kill me for this. He really.
To be fair, I think there has been. I think other than Algae, I think Kiss Me Hardy is probably up there as being one of the most requested set of rules for a second edition on the Two Fat Lardies website. So I think at this point it's probably a bit like Wolves Orthodox back.
Yeah, I was amazed that they were 11 years old. It's been really interesting talking to him about how he would change it if he was given the chance, and it's great to see how their games have developed over that period of time, up to what they have now.
Yeah.
So that was a really interesting game. Really enjoyed that.
And then in the afternoon, of course, you moved on to Indian Mutiny.
Yeah, it was Sharp Practice with an adaptation to the Indian Mutiny by Simon Walker. Simon's done a lot of work on this, and I think that's possibly going to be coming out as a Sharp Practice supplement fairly soon. I think they're working on a campaign system now and some scenarios. There were some very small tweaks to Sharp Practice, apparently, but I haven't played Sharp Practice in about a year, so don't ask me what they are. But the game was really good fun, and it was flowing, brilliantly umpired. There was 4 of us playing it, and it just flowed. It looks fantastic. I think it was based on a historical occurrence. So it basically the Brits were trying to get the officers' ladies and the NCO's ladies off onto ships to sail them off to safety, while a bunch of mutinous seat boys were basically wandering down the road, and they were all kicked off. But it just fantastic game. You had lots of stuff going on. The 4 players, it worked really well. There was enough to do for the 4 players. You weren't sat there waiting around for your turn, obviously, because it's the card-driven system. And it just worked. It worked really, really well. So, fantastic game. And I have managed to stop myself from buying a bunch of Indie Mutiny figures for now, but it just looked fantastic. It was a really interesting period. And it's one I'm going to go and have a little read up on and find out some more information. So Simon, thank you very much for putting on the game. It was an absolute fantastic game.
Which, let's face it, is half the point of days like this. If you can't try out something you haven't played before.
That was my whole point. Yeah, I sort of looked at the games and thought, I've never done that. Let's play it. The thing I thought was fantastic was the British managed to get to one of the boats, and they loaded it up with all the ladies, and one dastardly officer who decided to look after the ladies by getting in first. And then when they went to try to push the boat off the sandbank to float here, they worked out it was too heavy. So the next turn they had to wait for the car to come up, get the women off the boat, wait for another car to come up to then try and float the boat, and then the turn after that they had to get back into the boat with the officer, and then finally took cover, by which time I got close enough and I was able to shoot them. But obviously I was a nice person and didn't shoot the ladies.
I was about to say, that would have been most ungentlemanly of you.
Yes.
Oh,
but it was great.
Oh, right, so you were playing the Dastardly Mutineers, were you?
I was playing the Seat Boys, so I moved on under blinds and managed to get 3 units close enough to take part in the combat. The other 3 units were just wallowing around the road, taking their sweet time. The game itself, it was beautifully umpired. It was really narrative. Everybody enjoyed it. We were just laughing all the way through it. There was lots and lots of odd things going on. But it was just a really good game. It was a really good, fun game. And if anybody ever turns around and says, some of the Lardies games are a little bit highbrow and a little bit serious, they're really not. They're good, fun games, as long as you play them in the right company. Mm. So, yeah, that was my day. Really good time. I really enjoyed the day out. I really needed it. After all the hassle trying to get down there and arranging to borrow the wife's car, drive over there, and then having to go to see the mother-in-law on a Sunday, which, of course, is no great hardship. It was great. I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait for the next time.
As well as Mike was playing as opposed to actually running a game. I'll talk about the game I played in the afternoon, and then we can get Mr. Whitaker involved and talk all about the game that I played in the morning and Mike ran all day. But in the afternoon, I played Chain of Command in 15mm. Now, one of the reasons I'd done this was because I kind of like chosen to think, I'm going to play Chain of Command in 15mm. Except I haven't actually got round to playing Chain of Command in 15mm. So I was really interested to see how it actually played. And it was a great scenario. Aid had spent a massive time putting this scenario together. It was, based on the counter-attack of the 21st Panzer against the British Airborne at Bionville during the day of the 6th of June. And, yeah, it was a really nice scenario. From a German point of view, really quite frustrating. I was playing great chap, Steve from Carnarvon. So, hello Steve. And he was playing British Airborne and spent half the game rolling his dice and going, I'm not doing anything. No, I'm not doing anything. Just waiting for me to come on the table. Waiting for me to, just to see what was happening. German objective was basically to capture 5 of 9 houses in this particular area. Okay, that's all I had to do. And and he basically was sat as a defender. So did exactly what you're meant to do as a defender, and just let the attacker come to you and show his hand. And but it was, in some ways, it was quite a strange game, because you ended up in a situation where we ended up with this firefight across a farm complex. So, first time I came into opposition, but basically there was I came under sniper fire, but I couldn't spot where the sniper was. Although I basically worked out where he was because I had 2 units on Overwatch, and they had interlacing fields of fire. One could see the sniper and one couldn't. And so I worked out that the sniper was in this barn. So I thought, okay, right, we'll assault the barn. So we assaulted the barn. And British Airborne being, because they're elite troops, they're quite hard in close combat. So I assaulted the barn and had 3 of my rifle section killed by this damned sniper. Although I did take care of the sniper. At which point I discovered that the rest of the section that was with the sniper was in the farmhouse across the courtyard from the barn. So we had this massive firefight going on for several rounds. Except for the fact that you had two sections hold up, one in a house, one in a barn. So there's nothing on the table. Well, they're all off table sort of thing. But there's this huge firefight going on. And people come over and go, so there's not much going on here then. Yeah, there's this massive firefight going on. So but you just can't see anything because we didn't have any, hot water or anything to put in front of the barns or anything to say, yes, there's fire going off here. Or I think. Bottom line was, my initial probe got a bit of a bloody nose, and I was attempting to push down or to try and turn his flank when essentially we ran out of time. But a great little scenario, really well researched, fabulous table of game, and the game actually works really well in 15mm.
Not least because the ground scale and the figure scale match 1-to-1 in 15mm.
Indeed, and having played it in 28, you kind of think when you get down to 15, you think, well, will it work? Will it work as it is, or sometimes it would almost seem that you're thinking, well, would the game actually work better if you actually then converted inches to centimetres and played in 15mm that way? Because you know how sometimes you kind of get used to the, for want of a better phrase, the 28mm look of things, so things are slightly overscaled to actually the ranges you play. You kind of know what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no.
Which is probably much more prevalent in something like bolt action, where your ranges are so stupidly compressed anyway, compared to chain of command, or at least you're still at the my rifle will hit anything on the table.
You just had to go there, didn't you? You just couldn't leave it alone.
Nope.
It was actually quite good to see Chain of Command game played on a 6x4 at 15mm. Because you get so used to playing 15mm games. Oh, I play Chain of Command in sort of 20mm, so I tend to play on about a 4x4.
Yeah.
But playing on a 6x4, you've got so much more area there that you can use, and you've got so few troops that it turns it into a different game. And I walked past your game a few times, and there was, I could see about a dozen figures, but it looked quite impressive because there was so little going on that you could see that every single squad really had to work through the terrain to get to places, and it sort of worked. It was really odd because normally you play 6x4. If you do like a Flames of War game, you'd have about 20 times the amount of stuff on there. You had one or two vehicles and a couple of troops trying to cover the same area. It was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, equally, so you see folks who play I Ain't Been Shotman in 6mm, where again the ground scale and the figure scale match, and that looks really spacious on 6x4.
Yeah, but as I say, most people are used to, even a lot of people play I Ain't Been Shotman in 15mm on a 6x4 table. And the difference between having a 6x4 table with a platoon as opposed to what you'd all be expecting to be playing with a company on that size table, it was really quite interesting. As you say, with realistic ranges and various other bits and pieces, it does kind of give you an interesting impression of how things of how things look and how things work. You don't get this compression of scale because, let's say, everything looks about right.
Yeah, the other interesting thing that does happen quite a lot with Chain of Command is you find yourself playing down the length of the table, not the width, and that actually makes quite a difference.
Yeah. Funny enough, that was true in both games, both in the 15mm and the 28mm version. You were playing down the table, not across it. I heard some very interesting comments about the other game, and Dave, my good mate Dave Love with me, he played in the other Chain of Command game in the afternoon, and that's his first time he's played Chain of Command, because we actually haven't had a chance to play it together. So it's the first time he's had a chance to play it, and again he was really impressed. I think as we've been with just the way that real world tactics work, the way things like covering fireworks, the way that a realistic situation occurred where basically he was playing Paras and they were in a situation where they set up a fire lane with a Bren gun, and the enemy basically walked straight into it and decided, rather than bug out and try an alternative way, just kind of, we'll just carry on and we'll go through it. And there are some rules that you can get away with that, and they didn't. They got absolutely, that particular section got massacred.
Oh, actually, I really hope so.
Yes, which they decided to try and make a run for another piece of cover, rather than what. And of course, it's an example of not only trying to rush across an open piece of ground covered by a light machine gun, but also having taken shock. So you're also being affected by morale, and all that sort of thing. And the outcome is, as you might expect. To which the German side concerned apparently weren't very happy. But all you have to do is take a step back and go, hang on a second, do you really want to run over a piece of open ground covered by a light machine gun and a rifle section? Possibly not.
No, I wouldn't look.
So had a really good game of Chain of Command in the afternoon. Really impressed with the way it works in 15s. So I am heartened by that fact. Well, really well presented game. One of the great things I loved we were using A. Deacon's figures. One of the great things he'd done was because you record both shock and casualties, Peter Pig do these little 15mm packs of troops surrendering. I don't know if you've seen them.
Yeah.
But he used those with a little, with a little dice. The square things you put dice into.
Dice frames.
Dice frames. That's the thing I was after. He basically made a little vignette base with a trooper surrendering and a dice frame for your shock counter, and then obviously he did another one with a casualty figure for your casualty markers for because he still got multiple based figures, but it was lovely little touches like that. Really nice. So made it for a really nice looking game. So had a ball. So we'll come on to the person who hasn't talked a tremendous amount so far, but now can talk a whole load.
Oh dear Lord! Well, making up for lost time.
In the morning, we played a game called Bloody Omaha, which, as you may gather, was the US assault on Omaha, on a section of Omaha Beach, put on by our very own Mr. Whitaker, and on a large 8x6 table. Really nice looking game. Wandered in with masses and masses of large polystyrene bits of scenery to put down, and then proceeded to string out all these rows of barbed wire and various other bits and pieces. Lovely looking game. Well, Mike, take it away.
Well, it would have looked perhaps slightly better if A, I'd painted the edges of the tiles, and B, the table had been slightly more flat, because there were a few bits of unevenness in the tiles. But yeah, it was. I can't take credit for the look of the scenery beyond a certain point, as one of my club mates, Andy Miller, helped me build that terrain build. Only took us 2 days.
Really?
An awful. Yep. It's amazing. Well, the blue craft foam has one great advantage over expanded polystyrene. You can take power tools to it. Now, the hill contours were cut with a hot wire, but all the basic shaping and the trenches were done with a jigsaw and a router, and took us next to no time. So the first day was cutting tiles. I spent an evening between the two with a pot of brown emulsion, base coating the tiles, and then we spent the day flocking it and adding little bits of detail and so on and so forth. But Andy deserves an awful lot of credit for that, because he was the man with the power tools. The poor guy, for all that I've now run it twice, has not actually managed to play it yet. So I promised him that we will run it again at some point, and he'll get to play. But anyway, it's a scenario called Bloody Omaha, which actually comes from one of the early I Ain't Been Shot Mum supplements called Where the Hell Have You Been, Boys, which is a collection of US-based scenarios for D-Day and beyond, written by Rich Clark. So I did a bit of tweaking to bring some aspects of it up to I Ain't Been Shot Mum 3, and bugged Rich for his original notes, or at least the contents of his brain when he wrote the original notes, just to get a better idea of what he had in mind when he wrote the scenario in the first place. And yeah, basically the Germans get what effectively about a platoon and 2 75mm Czech field guns, and the Americans get about 500 figures. Although I've only got about just over 300 at the moment, because the theory, at least, Richie's notes say you should be able to. You only need about a company of figures because of the amount of casualties. Now, that's slightly made easy for him in that the Lardies tend to use single base 15mm figures, which does make it an awful lot easier to reuse casualties. But I'm using Flames of War style basing just because that's how I started out. And it also gets the figures a little close together, which even on that size board was getting a little interesting towards the end. Fortunately, the third wave of Americans never actually made it in, because I was probably going to be hard pushed to actually find enough figures to do it. Lives up to its name. I think you'll agree with that, having watched it and played in it. The German machine gun, the German machine guns into Brooks on top of the cliff are absolutely lethal to anything in the open. The 88 from down the beach is quite unpleasant as well.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Although Although it has to be said, kudos to the DD Sherman that actually stood up to a direct hit from an 88 and failed to ignite.
And, it didn't survive the second hit, though, did it?
Well, no.
But somewhere about that point, the 88 got taken out by US naval bombardment, which made everybody's life a little bit easier. Basically, I ran it over the whole day with a gap, with a pause for lunch in the middle, and a change of players. And I guess Neil can give you his impression of the first half, and I'll tell you what went on afterwards.
Indeed, yes. So I played in the morning. There were basically it was scenario. So there were four of us. It was 8x6 board. So the four players essentially each took a 2-foot section of board, waited for the landing craft to roll in. Due to the fact that one guy was uncannily good at rolling sixes, the majority of the first wave never didn't turn up on the first turn. And then when they did finally turn up, we had 2 landing craft hit by artillery. So they kind of turned up with a couple of bases, and most of the infantry had been killed. At the point, the way the game works, basically, the landing craft turned up on the edge of the board, and that's effectively their drop-off point. So you're deploying probably about 6 inches into the table, coming through the sand, which is basically a complete open fire area. There's an area of shingle, at which point you're starting to receive a little bit of cover, and then you have a sheer cliff. 2 points of egress from the beach with not quite so sheer cliffs, and wire right across the top. So even after you got off the beach, made your way up the cliff, you've then got this point of you're at the wire, hopefully with some engineers left, and you've still got to sort out your Bangalore torpedoes and get through the wire, while at the same time hopefully surviving the machine gun fire that's raking the wire.
Pretty much like the real thing, really.
Yeah, pretty much like the real thing. As I say, it's quite interesting because both of us took very similar photographs and did very similar things. We took photos looking up the beach about halfway through the morning, just after the second wave had arrived. So you've got this whole section of guys streaming at the beach. Yeah, lots of casualties. We were lucky, I think, with the fact that we didn't. The beach didn't come under an awful lot of artillery fire. Because,
I've had dreadful luck drawing artillery cars in both the real game and the play test.
The one major artillery bombardment that did hit the beach did an awful lot of damage. We were very lucky we got away with it. Otherwise, there may not have been much left of the first wave. As it was, I think it essentially impacted in the middle of 2 companies, which took about 50% casualties on it.
By lunchtime, I reckon the Americans had landed of the order of 250 figures or so. I think they'd lost 80, 90 maybe, and I think you could count the German casualties on the fingers of one hand.
Although the one major victory of the morning was actually caused by...
You're really pleased about that, aren't you?
I was seriously pleased about that. Again, as it worked out, we ended up with a Sherman DD tank in each of our areas. Mike mentioned there were these 2 75mm guns zeroed in on the beach, taking pot shots at the tanks and various other bits and pieces, as well as the 88 that we had to contend with. And I did actually manage to roll boxcars against the gun emplacement and take out a gun emplacement, which was the highlight of my morning.
I was about to say, it clearly quite made your morning. Yeah.
Oh, very much so.
For all this, people are probably listening to this and going, God, that sounds one-sided. All I can say is, 1, go and watch the opening of Saving Private Ryan, and 2, read some accounts of Omaha Beach. The takeaway from an umpiring point of view is that I was, both the times I've run this, I've been really impressed with how well Iron Beam Chopman handles it. It just felt right. It's hard work if you're the Americans, but it was hard work.
Yeah, and again, because of course, obviously, the other thing is that you're playing with 4 players, so there is a bit of downtime, and in a scenario that big, there is no getting away from the fact, depending on how you divide your labour up, there is no getting away from the fact that because because you're using a card-driven system, you are going to suffer a little bit of a downtime. We particularly felt for one guy due to he was operating in a particular section, and due to the way landing craft were turning up, hardly had anything to do for half the morning, didn't he? That was Dave.
I'm sorry, Dave. he did, but he didn't make up for it in the second half of the morning.
Oh, he did.
I think the first breach in the wire was his doing.
Indeed, he was, because actually, when the second wave turned up, almost everything turned up in his area.
Yeah. So that was pretty much the morning. The afternoon went pretty well. I said I had Rob Avery and Nick Skinner play, so no pressure there, of course. But they basically made it off the beach. They worked their way up through the gap between the bluffs, between the two German resistance nests, and found a way. Got surprised by the machine gun at the top of the valley, and finally managed to take it out by basically offloading everything they got on it. Rob Avery was taking an almost childish amount of glee. He had decided he was going to flamethrower one of the German defensive machine guns, which involved basically taking a fair amount of losses, going through 2 lots of wire. But I think, all in all, people seem to enjoy it. I had a great time. I've got a few takeaways to do for next time that I want to do slightly differently. If we do it again, I might take it to a show. We're thinking about taking it to a show at some point, because we think it looks pretty good.
It does look good. It's a really nice layout. You get halfway through the morning, and it really does look the part. I mean, as I pointed out to Mike on the day, possibly the only slight takeaway from the whole game looking the part was a rather garish set of post-its, which are put on the base of the units they belong to.
Mostly because there is, if the third wave lands, you can have parts of 18 different platoons on the table. And keeping track of who's in what section becomes quite important. With hindsight, I would actually bite the bullet and buy another box and a half of the Flames of War 29th Infantry box, just so I can have all 18, and I can just sit there and number the backs of the bases on a small white patch with a black Sharpie. And then we don't have to post horrible post-its and stuff, and we don't run the risk of having to reuse figures. The other thing I did want to do, and if I'd had time I would have done, but instead of which I was painting figures, is I have enough casualty figures that I think I can replace every base that comes off with a casualty base.
Oh, right, okay.
Just for dramatic effect.
That would have been interesting. That would look quite, sobering, I think.
Yeah, I think the whole scenario, I think various people said it's quite a sobering scenario. It's certainly one that you get quite emotionally involved in. Tim, who came with me, helped out on the playtest, and he said he found it one of the most involving wargame scenarios he's played in. So I'm feeling quite happy, actually. I enjoyed running that. I do like. I'm developing a thing for umpiring as much as playing. In fact, although I'm seriously considering whether or not I'll play something next year.
It did look good.
So, yes, it was a fine game. Well done, Mike. It was a good game. Really enjoyed it. So that was an experience of Operation Market Larden.
And I actually got to meet Sydney at last.
Mr. Roundwood.
Yeah, I've never met him before. We've chatted lots of times. I don't think we ever really met. So yeah, we had a good natter afterwards. We sat in the pub and Curry House, and yeah, he's a nice chap. He really is a nice chap.
Am I the only person who's noted quite what a fearsome handshake he's got?
No.
No, yes, he has been, yes. That was something of note. Yes, he's one of these guys who likes to take a firm grip.
And he's also one of these guys who apparently uses all the wrong paints and uses stuff he picks up at craft shops and, odd stuff, and his figures look fantastic.
Oh, they do.
Yeah. Git. He picks all the rules and they look fantastic.
Yeah, that was a lovely looking game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just plain not fair, isn't it?
Yeah.
When I'm sitting there desperately just block colouring boxes upon boxes of Flames of War minis.
The point where you painted over 300 Americans. I think you would be starting to lose the will to live just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll let you off on that one.
To answer the question that you didn't actually ask me, 2 days.
What, to paint them all?
Yeah.
2 days.
2 days. As I said, they ain't brilliant, but they're painted. And let's face it, sheer volume for sheer. Admittedly, one of the days was 6 a.m. to midnight.
That was block colour and wash, was it?
They aren't actually washed. It's on the list of things to do. I really wanted to get time to wash them, but it was either wash or base.
Ah, right.
I didn't have time for both. So they got based. They got based on the theory that they look better in photographs that way.
Yes.
Actually, no wonder those look naff. They're actually from the playtest. They're at the point where I hadn't painted the bases, so they very much look like they've been based with bits of flapjack.
Oh, right.
Yes, not so good. But if you look at, if they're slightly better on by the time they got to OML. But yeah, they took basically it really was batch paint because there's only there's the assault vest, the khaki for the leggings and the jacket underneath the assault vest, the trousers, rifle metalwork, flesh, and brown, violet, olive drab for the helmet. 7 colours. And you just sit there and you just paint. It was all a bit more last minute than I wanted, but
I was going to say you just sit there and paint. Yeah, that's something that's a little bit beyond my experience.
I basically took a day off and just painted. And having run the playtest, decided I need another box. So the second box, the third box, in fact the third box, there's 3 whole complete boxes of Flames of War 29th there. It needs about another box and a half. And I will ink wash them before next time, I promise. I'll be good. I will. I'll be good.
I'm actually looking forward to the 200 odd World War One figures I'm about to start.
What's you doing?
200. 200. Hang on. 200 World War One figures.
Yeah, 12 mil.
Wow. What are they for?
Alex's next.
Oh yes.
Yes. The next set of rules coming from Mr. Bushell from.
Oh yes, I heard mutterings.
Yeah, they were muttering. Yeah, I've got them all in a box. Freshly sent from Grip and Beast. They're lovely. But God,
Yeah.
French. Oh, French have got colours. It's World War One. Come on.
Yeah, this is true. This is one of the reasons why I'm not quite so dreading the 12 boxes of Napoleon at War stuff that's in the painting part.
No, what? 12 boxes in the No, I would be dreading that.
Oh, but I'm not, because it's not like you're sitting there and going olive drab, olive drab, olive drab, yawn.
No, you're doing blue, white, touch of different colours, oh, plumes, oh, geez, oh, no more white. I miss some white. Oh, muskets, shiny bits.
Yeah, well, my current plan is I'm going to do one battalion and get an idea for how the process works, I think. The French, and then start figuring out facing colours and other fun things like that. Yay.
I can send you some details if you want them. I've got lots of stuff here.
I have Pericoli's Armies at Waterloo, which has most of them in it.
Okay.
And plenty of web-based references, but thank you for the offer. I'm still interested in those Perry War of the Roses, if you want rid of them, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, I'm trying to remember who I promised them to.
Me.
You. Excellent. Right.
Perry War of the Roses figures.
You don't need them, Neil. They're plastics, you never put them together and you never paint them. It's harsh, Neil, but it's fair.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Deacon. Oh, thanks.
What's that then?
There's a Flames of War 29th box set currently sitting on eBay, finishing in 3 days. It's only at £5.60 on the watch list.
Doggy. Yes.
You just sent me a mail saying you said you were after another box, didn't you?
Mind you, I must admit, if I'm doing War of the Roses, I'll be doing War of the Roses. I'll be doing War of the Roses in 6 mil anyway. So.
Oh gosh, no! I want to use the Sharp Practice variant.
I've not played. I've heard good things about the Shop Practice.
I've heard really good things about that. If you look at Wargaming in Silver Whistle blogspot, his scenery is just gorgeous. The absolute inspiration as scenery.
I don't know if either of you two have got a copy of the the Penny's book that Pen and Sword produced?
I looked at it and went, ooh, figure porn must resist. I will probably get one sooner or later. It looks very nice.
Yeah, it's very nice, and the shots on the War of the Roses in there are just... yes, extreme figure porn. Triple X figure porn.
That's so. But then, given who it is, are you surprised?
Yeah, well, no.
I mean, it's just like some of those pictures in the back of Black Powder and supplements that you just look at and go.
I mean, to be fair, you know, there are several pictures that you've seen before in other publications, but you know, all together, all in one place, you kind of go. Yeah. So, Mr. Hobbs, you probably did the right thing by not offering them to me, but yeah, okay. Having said that, I'm sure you could play. I'm sure you could play shot practice in 6mm. In fact, I'm sure there's at least one crazy Australian who plays shot practice in 6mm. Yeah, I've seen battle reports.
Oh yeah, I've seen those. I want to see you do one of those nice spiral painted lances in 6mm.
Yeah, okay.
I hear words there with "off" in them.
Never going to happen.
Thank you for the vote of confidence.
You won't. I seem to remember you saying a couple of years back that you were going to fight or refight every single combat that took place in Britain from the Dark Ages forwards.
That was my hope.
Yeah.
Yes, that's my ultimate plan.
Yeah. How's that going? What year are you up to?
We're not here to talk about my figure painting exploits or lack thereof. So at this point, we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll be chatting about Flintloque.
I must get through to Sergeant Watson's position. Jenkins, cover me.
Sir.
Whoa. Sergeant Watson, bring your men in. Withdraw. It's all right, sir. We're enjoying ourselves.
What?
Yes, sir. It's these here chain of command rules, sir. We're having great fun. Chain of command? That's right, sir. It's a challenging but fun blend of command and control. It gives me the freedom I want to fight the way I want to. Never had so much fun, sir. And we've cooked you some sausages. Can't be helped, sir. Me and the lads are staying put. Chain of Command World War II platoon level rules from two fat lardies. They really put you in control. And they're even better than sausages.
The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is very happy to be sponsored by Coat d'Arms Paints. Now, Coat d'Arms have been supporting miniatures painters with their products for well over 20 years in some way, shape or form. Their current range is 150 sets of acrylic paint, which are available both as individual colours, but also in paint sets depending on period. Things such as the Ancients paint set, the World War II German, World War II American, World War II Russian paint sets, and they also include things like an ACW set and even a Horsetown set. That's one way to purchase your paints. And they also do triads. Now, if you're a fan of the 3-colour system, made famous by the likes of people like Kevin Dallimore, you may like to purchase your paints with a dark shade, a medium shade and a highlight. And the triad system from Coat d'Arms allows you to do this. They also have ranges of textured paints called Brushscape, which allow you to paint from textures onto bases as well as colour. And these are ideal especially for smaller scale models. And if you're a fan of the dip method of painting, then Coat d'Arms have their own product available called Super Shader. This is available in light brown, dark brown and black. Coat d'Arms Paints have a whole range of products available to try. Check them out at www.blackhat.co.uk and be sure to tell them that we sent you.
So in this part of the show, Mike, we're going to do another rules review, and with it being the 199th anniversary of Waterloo, we thought we'd give it a Napoleonic flavour, but only a flavour. I mean, let's leave something to the 200th anniversary, shall we? So we're looking at a game called Flintloque, which is vaguely Napoleonic, but Mike can tell us all about it. So, Mike, what's Flintloque?
Right. So, after spending the last hour talking about some good serious war games written by the Lardies, we're now on to something completely different. So, Flintloque. Flintloque is a pseudo-Napoleonic fantasy skirmish game. It was originally released 19 years ago, in 1995.
Boy, is it really that old?
Yeah, that's when I first saw it. At that stage in my existence, I was I just started playing Epic. I've been playing Epic for about 5 years, and I just started moving it into historical wargaming. And I bought a load of 6mm Heroic and Ross figures and their rules, and I picked them all up, and I proudly took them down to a brand new war games club in Cardiff that I've been invited to. And one of the old geezers walked over, looked at them, and went, "You painted them all wrong, and they're rubbish," and completely crushed me. And at that point, I started this slightly irrational hatred of anally retentive Napoleonic players. And then I found Flintloque, and it seemed to fit in. It was like it was like fate. So Flintloque is, like I say, it's pseudo-Napoleonic. It's a skirmish level game. You need about a dozen figures a side, if that.
Oh right, I was kind of expecting it to be a similar sort of size and something like Sharp Practice.
No, it really is low level. It kind of started as a RPG-like game. So if I take you through some of the background of it, so the first edition of the rules came out in '95, and there was this wonderful box set that came out, which I've still got. It was like a polystyrene tray, the sort of thing you get in garden centres with potted plants in them, wrapped in a cardboard sleeve with these pictures of orcish riflemen and elvish Whitakers on the side. And you had Lieutenant Sharp, who was a half-orc rifle lieutenant, and his band of riflemen. Okay, it's slightly based on Sharp, shall we say. It's very tongue-in-cheek. The whole game is almost a parody of the Bernard Cornwell books. So that was the first set of rules that came out. And in there you had about a dozen figures. You had a thin black and white A4 rulebook, and that was it. And they had a few other blisters that came out with, the Albion Orcs. Now, during this whole section, I will be jumping between proper names and the Flintloque names. So, in Flintloque, you have the Orcs of Albion, who are basically red-coated British. You then have the Ferric Elves, which are basically French. And all of the nations that you get in the Napoleonic Wars are basically captured in this game by use of different races. So you have things like there's the Jockeyan rats. The Jockeyan rats in their kilts. You have the Trollcar from the north, who are basically Swedes. You've got the Krautian dwarves, who are the Prussians. You've got the dogs of Saxfront, and all these races. So you've got fantasy races. You've got rabbits, dogs,
so
rats.
You've got Prussian dwarves.
Yes.
Which kind of fits my remit.
Oh,
yeah, almost completely.
You'd love them. Yeah. The first edition of the set of the rules came out between 95 and 97, and then the second edition came out in 98 with a Flintloque Reload that came out in 2002. The second edition were much more, in my view, they were clunky. I didn't really like them that much. They were very RPG-ish. they had skill systems in there. They had different columns for movement. It was it didn't flow very well. But that went on to about 2008, when you had rules for Trafalgar and the ships and boats were also included. But then we had the third edition, and the third edition is the one that we're going to talk about. So,
right.
The first rule book for that came out in 2009. So, in the third edition, what they've done, and it's very clever, in the background to Flintlock, which I'll come on to in a bit, there are 4 main campaigns. And what they've done is they've split the campaigns up. So, the first book that came out is the War in Catalucia, which basically is the peninsula, shall we say. And that introduces the armies of Albion, the Orcs, the Rats, the Hobgoblins, and the Bog Orcs. You've got the Goblins of Algarve, you've got the Dark Elves of Catalucia, and you've got the Elves of the Ferric Empire, as well as the Toderoni of Nepalese, who are toads. But in the first book, you get this whole background for this one campaign. You get all of the army lists, and you get the rules. And in each of the campaign books, they all follow the same route. So in 2010, we had Death in the Snow came out, which covers the Witchland campaign. And you've got in there the Dwarfs, Ogres, Dogmen of the Army of the North. You've got other nations. You've got the Undead, who are basically the Russians, so forth. So you get all of the background for that campaign, plus all the army lists, plus the rules again. So you don't have to buy a rule book and then buy a supplement for a particular campaign. It's all together, and it's quite a clever way of doing it, I think, because you literally just choose which campaign you're interested in and go and buy the source book.
Oh, okay.
Also in 2010, there was the one and possibly the only supplement for Flintlock, which is called Grape Shot, and that introduces artillery. So you get artillery rules, mine, weather, sappers, new troop types and stuff. But that book covers all of the nations that are ever going to be available, because over the last 19 years, they've pretty much bottomed out the whole backstory for this entire war. So, and also they've released pretty much every single figure, so that they know what figures are there, they know what figures would ever be released. They've sketched them all out, and they've included the rules in that one supplement. Moving on to 2011, we then had Beer and Bones, which is the Central Europe theatre of wars. So you get the Austrian Empire, which are the dwarves. Sorry, the Austrian Empire, which are dogs. You get the dwarves of Krautia. You get the rabbits of Barovia, and all sorts of other wonderful little minor nations, including my favourite, the Duchy of Saxfront. So that's what we're up to at the moment. So the last book was out in 2011. There is one due sometime this year, which is Blood on the Sand, which covers the campaign in essentially Egypt. So you get those nations coming out as well. So that's where the game is, and that's where it is now. So the game is 19 years old, but the current rules that are being played are only 5, 6, 7 years old. So they're still in vogue, and they're quite a nice gang-sized game.
Okay, so you mentioned gang-sized game. So how many figures do you need aside, and how are your forces created?
About 12 aside. What you have, it's a point system. It's still fairly RPG-like, so you build up your gang. You have an officer, you have maybe a couple of sort of hero-y type characters, and then you have basically the minions. They all cost points. Each book covers the relevant armies. Each unit has a section which includes notes on the makeup of the unit, how they fight, what weapons they use, what special rules they have, as well as uniform ideas. And each army is described in detail with the order of battle for that campaign. Different officers are included, and when you build your force, you have an officer, you have a basic officer, and officers have different sort of characteristics. You have some NCOs, and you have a bunch of grunts. You also have skills, flaws, and traits. So each nation has a bunch of skills that they can use. They have a bunch of traits that they get automatically. They also have flaws, and flaws can move your points level up and down. So if you spend quite a bit on various skills for your troops, you can offshoot that by having flaws included into your characters, which might be sort of drunkenness or, might be cowardice or something like that, which actually lowers the points down. So you see, the campaign system, which is built into the book, and is basically, at its heart, this is still an RPG-like system. At the end of each game, you basically get experience points, which you can then spend making your force better, replacing any figures that have been killed. You can roll to see if if they were wounded and they actually survive. So all of that is sort of built into the system. But essentially, at the end of it, you'll start a game with about a dozen figures of different types. Shall I run through the rules?
Yes, please. We've gone through figures. First off, let's do a look at turn sequence.
Standard table size is a 6 by 3. Stuff you'll
a 6 by 3
Yeah.
for a dozen figures.
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay, that's quite big.
Yeah, it's it kind of works though. Gives you lots of space. To be honest, I tend to play on about a 4 by 3, if I'm being honest. But it depends on the scenario. Remember, you do have cavalry in it, and cavalry can move quite a distance, so having the extra room, allows you to do that. The whole game is based around scenarios. There are loads of scenarios in the book. You'll need the usual stuff. It's mostly D10 and D percentage for all of your rolls. You need some measuring tape, and you'll need some beer. Deployment is always down to the scenario. Whenever you get a scenario, it describes the type of terrain that the scenario should be played in, tells you where you need to set up. But when you start, each player will get 3 command points, which are used during the game to give you a few extra abilities or a few extra sort of jumps. The turn sequence is quite simple. You have initiative. It's a D10 roll-off, some modifiers. You can use a command point to force a reroll if you want. Whoever goes first, so whoever wins that roll, chooses whether they want to go first or second. And then you move into the action phase. And the player who goes first chooses 2 figures, and those 2 figures can then make 2 actions. And actions would be something like move, fire. You can fire and move. You can make a tactical movement, which is like a charge or a slow march. You can decide how quickly or how slowly you want to move as part of your move. You can do an aimed fire. You can reload. If you do aimed fire or reload, you can't move.
Right.
So you choose 2 figures. You carry out those actions, those 2 figures, and then it swaps over to your opponent. They choose 2 figures, and it goes on. You can pass. You can elect to not move any figures and take a pass. However, if both players pass consecutively, the turn finishes, or the action phase finishes. So whilst it might be tactically a good idea to pass and force your opponent to take another turn, you have to be aware that if you do it, this phase of the turn could finish, and you're not going to move anything else. So you have to be sort of careful when you're going to pass on your move. If a figure has been hit during this turn, when it's activated, it has to make an opposed roll.
Right.
Otherwise, it can only move at slow speed. If a figure starts a turn shaken, which comes down to morale, he has to make a morale roll when it's activated. And if a figure starts its activation in base contact with an enemy figure, the only things it can do is either engage in melee or move slowly away. But it can only move slowly away if any figures that it's in base contact with have already activated. So you've got this whole action phase where you basically activate a few figures, you're moving into contact, you might do some melee there and then, you might shoot with some, it's combined arms and so forth. So it's even though you've only got a few figures, it's quite tactical on when you activate figures and when you hold off, and when you move into combat and when you don't. Once you've done all of the activation, you then apply wounds to figures, and then you go into a maintenance phase, and that's the end of the turn. So, movements. So, you activate a figure, you want to move. There's 4 types of movement. You've got double step, quick march, slow march, and half step. If you move a double march, you can't fire. If you move at any of the other 3 movements, you can fire, but you get modifiers, which basically make the faster you move, the less accurate your firing is going to be.
Right.
Terrain slows down movement when you enter it, so it's very much piecemeal. You can move up to a piece of terrain, and then if you move into it, that takes a certain amount of your movement. Each type of unit has a specific amount of movement that they can take. I mean, basically, it's the standard stats that you get. Each figure will have a movement value, a shooting value, a combat value, that sort of stuff, a morale value, and so forth. Cavalry can charge. Otherwise, if you're a foot figure, you have to move into base contact, and then you'd use a second action to actually perform a melee. So it means that you can move into contact and not do a melee, and then move another figure into contact and then do a melee, because the enemy figure is then basically outnumbered, which causes effects. You can use your command points during movement to do things like coordinated actions or rally troops. Coordinated actions allows you to activate more than the two figures. So if you've got a group of, say, 6 figures in a line, you can activate them all together using a command point. So you can do sort of line moves and that sort of stuff. But because it's a skirmish game, it's fairly free-flowing how you move. Combat. It's straightforward-ish, but there are quite a lot of modifiers and stats to be aware of. Basically, each weapon has a little chart which shows its range bands, and at each range band it has a percentage chance to hit. And it also, at that range band, has what is called a impact level, which is sort of the force of the hit. And what you basically do is, when you put a fire, you look up your percentage to hit at the range that you're firing at. You take away some modifiers for how quickly you've moved. And basically, if you move quickly, it moves the range band up one, which obviously lowers your percentage of being able to hit. You add some modifiers if you're aiming. You have racial benefits depending on the race you are. And you end up then with a percentage score. And you roll a percentile dice, and if you roll less than that, you basically cause a hit at that impact level. And then, if you cause a hit, you then do a steady check, which I'll come on to in a second. So it sounds fairly complicated, but in most factions, you're only going to have a couple of different types of weapons. Most of your troops will be armed with a musket. Your officer might have a pistol. You might have one other weapon. So whilst there's a lot of stats in there, you don't use many during the game, and you very quickly get used to, the actual modifiers and the actual percentage scores to actually cause a hit. For melee, again, base contact. Decide who you're going to attack. Each figure rolls a d10 with some modifiers. If you're outnumbered, or if you're wounded, or you're shaken, the highest score is the winner. And the difference between the two scores is the impact level, which again is using this steady check, which I'll chat about now. Officers can use their command points if they're armed with a sword, and that gives them some benefits in combat. But it's very simple with melee. Roll off, work out the modifiers, bosh bang. Once you've done your firing or your melee, you then do your steady check, which is, it's a form of morale, I suppose. But basically, again, it's a roll off on a table. You look at the impact level of the hits. You roll a d10, you add your steady rating minus the impact, and that's the score you need to roll under to actually nullify the hit. If you roll over the target score, that's the number of hits that figure has taken. It can also mean that figure is automatically taken from play if it's taken too many hits. So during the action phase, you only put on these hit markers. Once the action phase is completed, you then convert all of the hit markers to wounds. And if you've taken too many wounds, the figure's taken off. Nice and simple. The morale in this is actually quite clever. If a section leader is removed from the board, you place a shaken marker next to all surviving figures. If any of the characters received a wound this turn, you place a shaken marker next to him as well. So as soon as you're wounded, you take a shaken marker. If the number of figures removed drops the number of friendly figures to half the starting number, you place a shaken marker on the surviving figures, and then when they're activated, in the next turn, if you've got a shaken marker, you have to make a dice roll to see if they can remove it. Otherwise, they retreat, or they might actually be removed if they've got too many. So it's very attritional. Once you start taking a lot of shaken markers, it's really difficult to get your troops to rally and get them back into the game. So you've got to be really careful on, putting your troops in danger, because they can just literally just crumble away really, really quickly. It's very attritional. And essentially, that's the basic rules of the game. It's really, really simple little game. Each scenario obviously has its own specifics around it. I mean, when it comes to scenarios, each book, as it talks about the background of the campaign, you'll find these little scenario seeds, which are basically small scenario guides that you can play. And there's about 10 of those in each book. And then there's also 3 or 4 generic scenarios with guides on how to create new scenarios as well. So there's loads and loads of scenario ideas actually in each book, and the whole section is really well covered. It's one thing I really like about it is all of these different scenarios that you can play. It's obviously got a built-in campaign system, which we sort of covered. You gain experience. What else have we got in there? There is magic in the system, because obviously it's a fantasy type game. Magic is very light. Some characters can have a magical latency, which gives them some benefits. Which it's very much sort of passive magic. It's not, chucking fireballs at things. It's, it's magic which might give you a little bonus in combat, or mean that you can get some shaking markers off. It's not a game breaker in my view. It's very nicely handled, the whole magic system. So the things I like about them, I mean, they're a good set of Black Powder skirmish rules. I mean, even if you're not into the fantasy side, they're actually worth picking up because they're quite interesting. The background is really well developed. I mean, I could wax lyrically about the background for hours if you wanted to, but they've really fleshed it out over the 19 years that they've been writing this stuff up.
Well, you kind of hope that they wouldn't.
Yeah, and literally everything is covered. Counter generation is really at the heart of the game, and the campaign system really works well with that. The things I don't like about them, the counter generation can be a bit time consuming. Because you are sort of flicking back and forth through pages, looking at, what each troop should be armed with, and then trying to work out, giving extra skills and stuff to the main characters. I really wish there was some sort of app or something like that would sort of handle all of this sort of stuff, because it is, it's a bit sort of pen and papery sort of stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's typical RPG in a lot.
Yeah, I think at its heart it is still a bit of an RPG-like game. But that can take a little bit of time. It's not a sort of game that you can just throw together and head down the club. You tend to have to plan out the games you're going to play. Obviously with a mate and say that's But I think once you've got your characters set up and you've got your force together, then it's quite easy to play. But it's that initial getting yourself set up. The figures. A lot of people really hate the figures. They're totally Marmite.
You see where I have my... as I said earlier, I think first off, this is where the game becomes fundamentally flawed. I mean, first start, let's just get one thing clear. Who on earth would say the Brits are orcs?
Well, stubborn... Actually, it's not the Brits, Neil, it's the English of orcs. Because the Scots are rats and the Welsh are hobgoblins.
Saying nothing.
I think they're very orcish. They're stubborn. They're strong in morale. They they do what they're told. They're ferocious when they're cornered.
Yeah, but orc fire discipline is awful.
Oh, not in this game. The thin red line,
Except it's the thin green line, or is it the thin red and green line?
Yeah. I mean, you can moan the Welsh are hobgoblins, which are actually orange because of the amount of orange makeup that they use, and they got a Hang
on, jet back a second. Because of the amount of orange makeup that they use.
I think it's a bit of a dig at tanning salons.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. If we're not really careful, we could be starting slipping into racial stereotypes. This could get really dangerous very quickly.
This game is full of racial stereotypes. Trust me, it's very tongue in cheek. The tongue is very firmly planted in cheeks. Yeah, I mean the figures. You either hate them or you love them. I really like them. And I shouldn't do. They're when you pick up one of the figures, it's a big chunk of lead. They're huge hands, huge heads, very over the top and cartoony. But when you paint them, they're fantastic. I mean, I've got hundreds of the things painted, and I really like them, and I really enjoy painting them because they are so. They're almost like caricatures of figures, and if you can get past that, you're laughing. This is a game that doesn't take itself seriously, but at the heart of it, it's still a good game. I mean,
and
the figures are rough and ready.
Neil, of course, if you don't like painting figures, they will sell you figures on the website pre-painted for less than twice the price.
Yeah, and they're not bad quality either. Neil's gone very quiet.
He's gone very, very quiet.
Yeah.
I couldn't possibly comment at this point in time.
You have to have a look at the Crouchian Dwarves, mate. They're fantastic. Yeah, so a lot of people don't like the figures. I've met a lot of people who don't like them. I do. They just tickle me, and they're fun to paint. And if you're not a brilliant painter, they end up looking good. Give them a base coat and a little wash and a little highlight, and they look fantastic. There are a lot of limited edition figures, which does upset a lot of people.
Oh right, okay.
They've done limited edition figures for about the last 19 years, funnily enough, and they'll do a limited run of 500 or 1,000 figures, and when it's gone, it's gone. But they tend to be officers, characters like that, and they're not core figures. They're not figures that are going to break a game. They're just little vignette-y type figures that you can use. Again, if you can get past that, great. I mean, you don't have to collect them all. I've got a couple. I've got a couple of really old ones. But, they're...
I think when you say a couple, you probably mean a bit more than a couple, don't you?
Of the limited edition ones, no. I've only really got about 10, if that. And I've got a lot of figures here. I've got... the one thing we didn't mention is around about 2002, they released the big battle version of this called Waterloo, which I would love to chat about on here, because that is another really good Napoleonic game. But to play Waterloo, you need about 150 figures aside.
Right.
And the figures are arranged into divisions, so you have a division of about half a dozen units of about 20, with a colonel running that division, and then you have your C and C. So you have wings in your army. And I've got 4 or 5 divisions of troops. I've got 2 divisions of French painted. I've got a division and a half of the Albion Orcs. I've got a division of the Jockeyan Rats to paint up. I've done about half of those, which is a bit of a sore subject because my wife bought them for me for my 40th birthday, which was 8 years ago, and I've only painted up 30 figures so far in 8 years.
Blimey, that's almost as fast as me.
Yes, but they've got kilts and things, and they're rats, and they take a while. But yeah, I've got lots of it. I've got lots of the undead as well, which is great fun because who doesn't like vampires and zombies?
And the undead are Russians.
Yeah, because there's so many of them. Yeah, they're zombie troops. Commanded by vampires with leeches or liches. You also get some werewolves in there and a few other sort of monstrous beings floating around. But on the whole, they're zombies. And they were quite interesting because the more experienced troops are the worst ones because they've been resurrected far too long and they're starting to fall to pieces. It's all been thought about,
It actually sounds like a decent game. Who actually produces it? Is it Alternate Armies?
Yeah, it's Alternative Armies, who are based just south of Glasgow. Originally, it was Steve Blease and Mike Owen.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Mike Owen was the original sculptor for it.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the really early figures, I mean, the original Flintlock box set with Sharp's rifles in there, or Shark's rifles, are lovely little figures, but they came out with a box set called Deadlock in '96, which had about a dozen Russian zombies in it, and this small unit of 6 elvish, not deserters, but they're basically trying to fight their way back. So you had all sorts. You had like a chasseur off his horse, a lancer, a sergeant from the infantry, and all different units. And those figures are fantastic. They're really beautiful, nicely sculpted figures. I'm pretty sure Mike Owen did it, and they're some of his nicest work. I mean, but since then, some of the sculpting has been a little bit rough. They've done an awful lot with using the original dolls, I think. But it all kind of works. You know, if you've got a dog in a French Napoleonic uniform, you can't go to the standard of the Perrys, you know, because it just doesn't work. You've got to make it cartoony, and the figures are cartoony, but, you know, if you like them, you really like them. But putting the figures aside, if you just want to play a little sort of Napoleonic type game using whatever 28mm Napoleon figures you've got floating around, pick up one of the rule books and have a look at it. Because in fact, you can get the rules free from the Alternative Armies site. Download them and have a little look at them. They will fit into a standard Napoleonic game quite easily. You can use the traits that are in there, and it all sorts of gels and it all sorts of works. I mean, I played them with standard 28mm games, figures. Again, just to upset a dyed-in-the-wood Napoleonic player. Because I didn't tell him what the rules were. I just umpired it. He thought it was wonderful, and I went, "Oh, by the way, it's Flintlock." And he got very upset and stomped away.
What, having enjoyed the game?
Yeah.
A mate of mine, conversely, was a long time ago in a club with some of those species of Napoleonic wargamer who were a little bit obsessed about the details, and proceeded apparently to turn up for a game with at least 2 units of his British army being Flintlock orcs.
I've done that. I played Black Powder using my Flintlock stuff because we wanted to try the rules out. Nobody had any 28mm figures, so I turned up with 300 painted Napoleonic-ish type figures, and we had a great game. At the end of the day, it's a figure, you know. Yes. But you know, that's it. I mean, there's 20 years of development has gone into this game. They've done their homework. They've built up the groundwork. At its core, it's a good little game.
And they've been releasing a lot of scenarios in PDF format recently.
Yeah, there's the online group called Orcs on the Web. They've got a site. There is a lot of support. I think the game is going through a little bit of a revolution again. It's on people's radar. I think people have worked out that it's not just, you know, a crap rip-off of a Napoleonic game, that it is quite good. And people are starting to take to it again. And yeah, there's been a lot of chatter around sort of various forums about the game. But it's always been supported by Orcs on the Web and by Alternative Armies, and they're really, really good. If you contact them and ask them for information, they'll send you it. And they'll tell you where you can get information. There's a Yahoo group, there's the website. You can get a lot of free stuff, a lot of scenarios. You know, it's worth a punt in my view.
As far as things like the scenarios and stuff are concerned, I mean, I know they're kind of designed for Flintlock, but could you get away with playing them with things like, I don't know, things like Songs and Drums and Shakos, for example, which is another variation on a Napoleonic skirmish game. So, are they things that you could multitask into other systems?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what they in the scenarios, they don't tell you the figures to use. They'll give you a pointer, and they basically say, you know, play this with X number of cavalry and X number of line troops. So it doesn't really matter what system you use.
Oh, right, okay.
The reason that they do that is because I I did ask them if they could do a scenario with pre-rolled up units. They could just take the scenario and some figures and go and play it. And they did do one for me, and they basically broke it down. And I think that's on the site somewhere. But, I mean, they do have, in each book, they have, for each faction, they have an example of what a unit would look like, and it's all rolled up for you. And in some of the scenarios, they say, use the faction from page 74 or whatever of the rule book, so you can actually go and have a look at it, so you can play it that way. But the ones on the web, I haven't looked at all of them, but I think normally they just sort of say, if, for example, you're playing the Albion, you'll need 4 hussars, and you'll need 1 officer on foot, and a sergeant, and 4 riflemen. So you've got guidance on how to put your units together, but it's up to you how you actually fit it all together. And obviously you've got the point system there, which you then need to balance everything with. So yeah, it's
right.
Out of the 2 games, Flintlock I play quite a lot, and I really enjoy playing it. Slaughterloo, I've only played it a few times, but I was really impressed with Slaughterloo. So maybe if we get a chance to chat about that in a future podcast, we can. But that's
I'm sure we can come back to it.
Yeah, it's worth investigating. This is a British company. They've been going for 20 years. They've always been slightly under the radar, slightly sort of quiche, but they have produced some fairly good stuff. I mean, I know some people have looked at the rule book and gone, well, it's not the greatest quality because it's mostly black and white. Maybe we just got a bit blasé and we always want these full colour rules. I kind of think it doesn't matter what colour the print is, as long as the rules are good. And at the heart, these rules are quite good. So there we go. That completes the Mike's Odd Wargame of the Week section of the podcast.
You can pick them up from Alternative Armies. How much are they?
The books themselves, I think they're about £20. I will tell you now.
And are they available for things like PDF download and stuff like that?
You can get the basic rules. So the basic rules, which are in each of the campaign books, you can download free off the website. Actually, no, the books themselves are £15, 15.
Okay.
And they're about 90 odd pages long. They've got the usual charts in there. They've got, in the download section on the alternative website, on the Alternative Armies website even, there's downloads there for sort of troop rosters and the QRS and all that, the usual stuff. They got some deals in there. You can get like a starter pack, which gives you, the rule book, 12 figures, some bases, the dice, and that costs about £30.
It's worth noting that as of the time of recording this podcast, almost exactly, in fact, Alternative Armies are moving their website, and it may be down for somewhere between the next 2 days and a week. So by the time this is edited, it's probably going to be back up.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm on it now, and it looks like it's changed from what I'm used to. But yeah, they're doing good stuff, and I think these are the sort of companies that I'm really keen to sort of try and support. Because these are the sort of companies that are the bedrock of our game, I think, or of our hobby. They've been ploughing on for 20 years. God bless them. They've got lots and lots of stuff coming out. They don't just do Flintlock and Slaughterloo. They got fantasy rules and figures. They got, I think it's 54mm sort of Greek style Celtic myth and Greek myth rules. Got some really good sci-fi figures, sort of 15mm sci-fi. So, yeah, they got loads.
They're tied in with 15mm.co.uk, aren't they?
It's the same company, I think.
Yeah.
So there you go. So for your birthday, Neil, we'll get you a nice unit of dwarves.
Yes, a unit of dwarves for every system. That's right. Okay, well, thanks for that, Mike. Hopefully you found that interesting, and as I say, it's something slightly different. It sounds like a decent set of rules. So and especially since all the basics are downloadable for free. So that's something I think I always think is really nice. At least you can go and grab them off the website, go get a bit of a feel for how the game works, and go from there.
Yeah, but I do have to warn you: as soon as you buy one set of figures, it will change your life, and you'll end up like me with hundreds of things.
Okay, we'll take that as your warning for the day.
Yes.
Yes, you have been warned. You heard it here first.
Expect scores more people blaming you for their new figure addiction, Neil.
Yeah, but this time at least I can turn around and point the finger and say it's all Mike's fault.
Yeah, unlike my addiction to I Ain't Been Shot One, which is definitely yours.
Really?
Oh yeah.
What a shame. Never mind.
Oh, come on, Mike. You knew sooner or later you'd go off and buy those 500 15mm Americans that you always wanted.
I probably own more Battlefront figures than quite a lot of Flames of War players, actually.
But probably not as many tanks.
No.
Right, so I think that's about all we've got time for. We've written on for far too long.
As usual.
Yeah.
So I hope you found something within this couple of hours that you found entertaining or enjoyable. So, until next time, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you very soon.
It's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Bye.
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 Thank you for listening to the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. If you want to know more about Meeples and Miniatures, there are several things you can do. First of all, you can visit the website at www.meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. If you want to contact the show at all, you can email me at neil@meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. You can follow the show on Twitter. Simply look for M&M Podcast or click the follow us on Twitter button from the website. We also have a group on Facebook. That's the Meeples and Miniatures Podcast Fan Club. Again, follow the link from the website. And finally, if you want to help us to support the show, you can always donate to the podcast by clicking the PayPal button on the donate page, again found on the website. Once again, thank you for listening. I hope you've really enjoyed the show. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.